welcome to this Four Pees Café. This is one of the highly anticipated ones with a guest speaker. Today our guest speaker is Dietmar, who is going to tell us about the newest Copra release, Copra 8. So I'll give the word to him very soon. As usual, this is a Four Pees Café, so feel free to unmute yourself, to ask questions, to interrupt, and to start a conversation, because that's kind of what we like to do here. Afterwards, this is being recorded. You probably saw the message when you came in. This will go on YouTube, so you can rewatch it later as well. Okay, so if we have no more people joining us right now, then I think, Dietmar, I'll let you introduce yourself a bit more, and we'll get started.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you for this opportunity speaking at your Four Pees Café. Copra 8 has hit the roads 2 weeks ago, so that's basically the first official presentation of Copra 8 to the public, so that's nice as well. And yeah, I'd like to give you a short overview of some of the main new features, but I will dive a little bit into DeviceLink profiling as well. Let's see how far that gets us. And if you have some questions, yeah, please step in, that's all fine. And yeah, because you might see that I have a quite light background here, and I'm looking to another screen anyway, I will have my video switched off now and will share my screen. Do I have to do something to share my screen? I guess I have to click this little button here, something like that will happen, right? And so I hope that works for you. Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so is there a way how I could make my screen stop sharing, stop video? No, stop. Yeah, I can't unshow myself here, but okay, but it will work. Okay, so. A little smaller. So that's Copra 8 that you're seeing here right now. And one of the new things we've done with that version is that it is supporting the dark mode. The dark mode works as well on older Macintosh versions. I'm here on Mojave. And it's quite, yeah, it has some issues, I would say, the dark mode on Mojave, but more on a general level in terms of fonts, how they are looking like and this kind of things. But it's getting better with Catalina and Big Sur, and the software works on all of those operating systems. We are as well working with the M1 processor on the newest MacBooks. So that's all supported now. The dark mode is supported on the Macintosh, but not on the Windows currently. But that's, you'll see, it looks like quite nice on the Macintosh here. And yeah, so I will use the dark mode here. Typically, I'll use the lighter modes. I like them more, but well, people like the dark mode, so we have support for that as well. What I would like to start with is the DeviceLink profiling, because we have made some improvements to what is called the rendering of DeviceLink profiles. I would like to start with a rather untypical use case, but you will probably see that it has some advantages to do as well device links for RGB to CMYK. For example, Adobe RGB to ISO-coded, as we are seeing here. And we have some nice changes that we've done to the rendering. As you all know, a device link has only one rendering intent, and you need to define the sort of rendering intent in there. And since Copra 7, we have already added a mode here for the rendering, which basically makes sure that all the settings that are part of a rendering, which are the gamut mapping strategies, the advanced rendering options like chroma, saturation, lightness, are then disabled, so to speak, and they're automatically calculated. And with Copra 7, we have done this automatic calculation of rendering intents based always on the source gamut and the target profiles gamut when we are converting from a smaller to a large color space. But in our example here, from a large color space like Adobe RGB to a smaller color space like Fogra 39 ISO-coded, we haven't done that in the past. And now with Copra 8, we can do both. So we can now as well convert from or calculate the best rendering for the conversion from Adobe RGB, for example, to a smaller color space, and vice versa from a smaller color space to a larger one. And what's happening here in the background is that we have 3 options here. This option, either to use a paper relative or paper absolute rendering, that's something which we can't calculate. That's basically a choice that you are taking. Either you want a more paper relative rendering, which means that, for example, on a yellowish paper, the gray balance and all the colors shift rather to the yellowish side, whereas on the bluish paper, the rendering will be as well for the gray balance bluish, and as well all the colors will be more bluish. And that depends either on taste, and the other thing is as well on the use case. For example, if you're printing on a large format print and put that on a large screen or something like that, large wall, then something like a paper relative rendering is definitely a good choice. However, if you're printing, for example, for a magazine and the cover is printed in offset and the inside is then printed in engraver, so you have different kind of papers and as well different kind of paper whites, then you want an image is to be printed on both the cover and the inside, then you want to have a close match between those. And therefore, something like a paper absolute rendering is a better choice. So having these 2 options, paper absolute and paper relative, sounds quite obvious and it's quite clear. So why do we need such a rendering or an automatic rendering calculation? I can show you why if I switch to custom. And we have quite a few rendering options here. We have the typical Icc versions here, and we have multiple paper relative one, standard compression, black point compensation, minimum compression paper relative. These are all paper relative rendering methods, whereas the paper absolute versions, absolute compression, minimum compression paper absolute, and minimum white compression are as well 3 options how to calculate a paper absolute rendering and which of them to choose. And even more in Copra, that's already since the beginning, we have 2 possibilities of selecting rendering methods. Just to show you this absolute compression here, and if I use something like standard compression, meaning a mixture between absolute and relative, we could have a merge option between them. And as you can see here in the graphic, the gray balance will switch rather to a relative one, which is using the standard compression, or to an absolute one here. And a merge gives us anything in between. And obviously, there must be some point in here which gives us the best coverage of 2 gamuts that we are rendering. And this is what this method does. So for example, if I'm now switching to my custom setting and I would say, okay, I want to switch to paper relative, what's happening is, first of all, the 2 rendering methods will be switched to standard compression and minimum compression paper relative. And the merge slider has switched to something like 50% in this example. So it uses a mixture between those 2 rendering options to give a good rendering or a good mixture of the 2 color spaces to minimize the overlapping of the 2 gamuts. And sometimes, especially if we are matching from a small to a large color space, then you will experience that, for example, the chroma will increase or lightness will decrease and this kind of things. This kind of settings that you would in the past would have tried and experienced yourself, which gives us the best rendering. This is now calculated automatically. So that's quite helpful for that question, which rendering should I use, or which rendering settings should I use? This is now taken automatically with those two options here. There's one option here, which is our secret weapon, I would call it, for typical applications, like, for example, if there is an offset print that is done with a large amount of prints, and later on there's a reprint necessary, but that reprint is to be printed on digital. But obviously the client requests that the colors look the same as the original offset print. And for those applications, the mode close match is intended, which is an absolute paper rendering option, but it uses as well the minimum white compression here. And that's a fixed setting here. So this is not calculated, but it's a fixed setting. And close match is only useful if the two gamuts are rather nearly the same in size, or the target color space is larger in size, like in proofing, where you would use a output device that has a larger color space than the one that you are simulating on. So that's where the close match comes in. And that's if you don't use that so far and are interested, that one would be your secret weapon to solve that question. Do I get the same color appearance on my digital to my offset, for example? Yes, you can with that close match option. For other use cases, like for example, if you want to have a nice printout that looks close to your original, then you can still use other options here, but the closest match will definitely be this one, the close match option here. So for example, here, if I'm going from low bit RGB to iso-coated, I would want to use a paper relative approach here, and I can select that mode. And what's happening in here is it will select the rendering. The exceptions are set to automatic, which means that if I switch to custom, we can see them better, which are enabled. Copra calculates which are the best exceptions to be used. For example, a typical thing is if you're rendering a yellow, an RGB yellow on your printer, mostly that yellow, as the hue is different between an RGB and a CMYK, that you will have some contaminations of additional colors, like there's always a certain percentage of cyan or magenta inside, and that's mostly ugly. It's for sure the better colorimetric result, but it's ugly. And therefore, we are calculating if the hues are not too far away, we would then enable the exception so that yellow is pure yellow in CMYK at the end. Whereas, as we can see here, cyan and magenta are disabled because they are too far away, and keeping them pure would be wrong in color appearance. And we can see as well the max CMY and max RGB exceptions are enabled. We have worked on those two exceptions as well in Copra 8. We've improved them. How that works and what they do, I will show you later on in another feature where we apply the device links later on. Color generation is of lesser importance now. It is just that I want to show you shortly the separation settings. So we are using basically the target profiles black generation settings, the target profiles black point setting, like 330% and the maximum black of 95 here. It is grayed out because it's in the target profile, so we want to use exactly that. If you want to overrule that, we can always switch to one of the other modes, like for example auto, and then can overrule, because something like 95%, that's a little bit of old school, I would say. Nowadays, we could print as well with 100% black, leading us as well to a better black point. Copra always calculates the resulting black point, which is getting us a darker black point here, L star of 9.2, whereas if I use something like 95 or something to 10.5. So we are gaining 1 L, meaning more contrast, better result at the end. So it's definitely a good choice to do this. So to do that, if I've set all my settings, I can now create my device link. And typically the names of the profiles are listed here that I'm using here, paper relative, and I'm using the paper relative setting, and we'll create that profile. So that's one profile. And for curiosity, I would like to create a profile without any exception, just that we know what's happening if I don't use any of those exceptions. So I will create another profile in the meantime, paper relative, no exceptions. And I will create this profile too. What we are seeing, or not seeing right now, but what we are seeing is that the profiles will be calculated. And as we have no comparison now, one thing that I can tell you from the tests that we've done is that Copra 8 is about 2 times faster in profile creation for device links and printer profiles compared to version 7. So there has been some, under the hood, some improvements of the way how we calculate the profiles. So that leads to the speed improvement, and that's quite helpful, especially if you're creating a lot of profiles. That's definitely an advancement that we can reach with that. So we have created the profiles. Now we want to apply them. And to apply them, you could use, for example, Photoshop. But hey, you can't, because Photoshop only support RGB to RGB device links or Cmyk to Cmyk. Here we have an RGB to Cmyk, so we can't apply that device link in Photoshop. Therefore, we can use our image conversion feature. And under image conversion, you could select your image that you want to convert. That's a Cmyk image. Obviously, I wanted to have something different here. My RGB image. In Copra, we are supporting, or we are delivering the edit targets, and there's as well one that we want to use here for RGB. We are using that image here. And if I select my image, I can define my color management that I want to apply. First of all, I would like to see how it looks like with the very normal traditional printer profiles. So I'm going to select Adobe RGB here as my source profile. My target profile will be ISO-coated. I would select something like perceptual and background compensation, maybe background compensation here. I want to embed the target profile, and a very nice feature that we've now changed and added to the image conversion is this little tool here, which shows us the source color space, RGB, and our target color space, which is now Cmyk. So we could see, wow, that's my RGB, and obviously this is my Cmyk. So I'm losing, obviously, one of this, the brightness of the RGB, typically in the edge colors that we have here at the bottom. And at the top here as well. This is the typical RGB cube that's shown here. And the colors can, of course, not be printed that purely. That's not possible. So, but the nice thing is I can already see in that little preview how the colors will look like. So what I'm doing here is now I'm converting from Adobe RGB to ISO-coated black point compensation. By the way, I can as well show the paper white simulation here. So if I have paper white enabled, then this is a real true color view of how it will look like in print. But in this case, I don't want to do that. I just want to save that image, but I don't want to use that feature, but this feature here. And this feature allows me to, on desktop, I will save it on my desktop, allows me to create a file with different layers of conversions. So I've defined my file that I want to create, and now I add a layer with that conversion, and I add another layer with a different conversion, this time using perceptual rendering intent. I just print on the add layer. And now I want to use as well my device links that I've just created. And to do that, I could either type in the name of the profiles, or with the recent file options, right-clicking on this little arrow, you can see all the profiles that are recently created. That's the one with the no exceptions. And as this is a device link, there is no target profile because it's all in the device link. So that's the reason why the rendering intent and the target profile is disabled. But I have all the conversions that I want to do. I add that as a layer as well. And I will add as well the other profile with using all the exceptions. I'm adding that here as well. And what I've done already in the past, I've created profiles with the previous version of Copra 7, and I want to use that as well for comparison, how it looked like in Copra 7. And I think I have another one which I created with Copra 7 that I want to use as well, this one. Here we go. And I add that as well. So I have now a large file with different layers. And if I'm opening that in Photoshop, we can see the layers. And the nice thing is we name the layers according to the conversions that we've created. And we can now switch to those layers and see how the conversions look like. And if we have any improvements or differences, let's start with the normal Icc conversion. What we can see here is, well, if I'm doing this Adobe RGB to isocoated using relative plus blackpoint compensation, I see a horrible result. So that's not blue, that's purple. There is no details at all in this area. So horrible. Just I'm doing this on purpose here because people often and very often use relative plus blackpoint compensation. That's a bad choice. That's nearly every time a bad choice. So if you can avoid that, avoid it. That profile that I'm using here, the isocoated profile, unfortunately is not that much better if I'm using perceptual rendering 10. Still, I have a little bit more detail here, but it's still purple and not blue. But there is definitely some other things going on in the conversion. So there's a shift in the skin tones and so on. So a little bit, perhaps not that good. Now we'll have a look into what the conversion would be with our device links without any exceptions. So I'm just switching between the relative plus blackpoint version and this one. So that's definitely an improvement in terms of smoothness, in terms of details, in terms of hue. So alone using the device link is already a better choice. So that's already good. Using the automatic exceptions now with the max RGB and max CMY exceptions, leading to very nice and clean and high saturated edge values. So the gradients here that we are seeing are much more saturated, looking much more, much better. And mostly people are looking at those edge colors as well if they are converting files. As you could see as well, edge colors are mostly a little bit overrated, but nonetheless, we are demonstrating the software and we are showing people the results of a conversion if we are a dealer, for example, and presenting that to our clients, and mostly our clients look at those edge values. You could see there is no change here into images. So obviously we need to have some images that use those edge values that we can really see those advantages. But if you're having image conversions with very high saturated colors, there will be an impact of those exceptions. And you can see this is what the exceptions are doing. This is how it looked like in Copra 7. So I'm switching back to Copra 8. So we can see it is in Copra 8, it is even more saturated results. So that's an improvement in the edge values. And it is as well a more fresher look. So probably that goes out a little bit via the Zoom presentation here, but there is a little bit more power in the image. So if I'm using this one, yeah, so this one is Copra 7 and this one is Copra 8. Yeah. So you see there is more freshness, more light, more contrast, more details as well in the rendering when I'm using the max RGB and max CMY exceptions. And this was how it was created with the automatic settings in Copra 7 as well. So if I really want to compare Copra 7 results to Copra 8 results, then I have to use that. Yeah, so this one and this one. So that's Copra 7 and that's Copra 8. And the reason for this change are the exceptions, the changes in the exceptions that we've done. So if you really want to impress your clients for RGB to Cmyk conversions, using device links and using our new auto rendering and the auto exceptions that we are calculating gives you this impression. And that's what I wanted to show you. So going back to Copra, what I've used here, so again to the device link option, what we are doing here is we simply use the automatic exception mode here, and it will calculate the exceptions that are leading to this result that we have seen here. And that's an impressive result, basically. What's very often overlooked is that if you're creating those device links and you've seen me create one without the exception and one with the exceptions, sometimes looking into images like with those layers that I've just demonstrated here is already helpful. But it is a little bit more work. And therefore, to avoid this work, what we have implemented in Copra are the profile reports. And this is a feature we have in there since a long time already, but it's very often overlooked. And those reports can be created during the profile creation process already by simply clicking this create profile report checkbox, and then it will create a PDF and open that PDF. I disabled that here because I wanted to show you that you can use this report as well, even if you have forgotten to create those reports via the Profile Manager. And in Profile Manager, if I'm there, I can search for any profiles with Adobe RGB. And here we go. Here are some of those profiles here. I want to limit this all to the device link profiles so that I'm only seeing those device links and only the ones with Cmyk. So we can find our profiles faster. And if I'm looking to our two profiles here, the one with no exception and the one with exception, I will right click and create a PDF report. And then that report will be created and will be opened. And I will as well create a report from the one with the exception. And we'll open that again. So I have now the two reports open, and we want to look a little bit into what exceptions are doing and how to check those exceptions. So let's have a look here. We have some chapters here, general profile information and so on. What we want to look into are the gradients, because that's where the exceptions play a role. So first of all, we want to start with the one without any exception. And let's look into this part here. That's the cyan, magenta, yellow. And we can see that, for example, to render the Adobe RGB in iso-coated, we would need yellow, but we would use as well a little bit of cyan. This is what I mentioned at the beginning. There is some contamination of a little bit of cyan in this example here that leads to a colorimetrically correct hue of the yellow, but well, it looks ugly. Therefore, if we using the one with exceptions, which makes sure that yellow is pure, you can see that our contamination is gone. And that's simply by looking at the report. You do not even have to convert your images to check your yellows. You can simply look into the report and see it right away that this will happen. And the other thing which we can see is as well, cyan uses a lot of yellow. Disabling or removing that yellow would remove 12% here for the full tone of yellow. That's a little bit too much. Yeah? So that would change the hue too dramatically. And here in magenta as well, there's 10% of cyan in there. So that's quite a lot. Disabling the cyan here would be possible, but it would change the hue too much. And therefore Copra decides, okay, that's too much of a change, better not. You can override that by enabling the checkboxes, but it is not recommended, let's say, at least from Copra. And what we can see here, the max RGB, what it does is as well, it improves on the amount of cyan and magenta and yellow that we are using here as well. And the same is, for example, if we look into the secondary colors. So green is a secondary color, blue is one, and red is one. And here, if we look into what's happening typically without exception, so we see the green uses, how much is it? Is that 50, 60, 65, 68% of cyan and 80% of yellow. And the max RGB improves that. So it adds more of the cyan and magenta to our rendering here to get it more contrasty, more powerful green here. The same with the blue and with the red. And we can see this right away by looking at the curves. So those curves are quite helpful for those examinations of the profile and tell us a lot about the pureness of the colors. And that's the reason why I'm always, if I'm creating a device link, I create one without the exception so that I know what should be the result without any exception, without any intervenence. And then I use the exceptions to improve on the result. And mostly the auto exceptions with this auto checkbox is already what I expect or what I hope for in terms of the results. And I can see this right away here in the report without having to convert files and looking how the impact of that choice with the exception is. So that's quite helpful in terms of the report. And we have made some changes and some improvements of the profile report for specific device links. For example, here in Copra, we have not only the typical device link profiles, we have as well safe ink profiles, which are as well device links. We have as well linearization profiles. And we have as well the possibility to iterate the device links to get, so that's this feature here, to improve on a device link conversion. And the reports have been improved and enhanced for those two modules as well, so that we have more information about the device links that are creating here in the report. So that's quite helpful. So we have looked into device links, and we have applied the device links and looked as well into the reports. And there's one thing I would like to show you as well, and that's in device linking. If I'm doing something like a conversion from, let's say, isocoated to another color space, like for example, uncoated. If I'm doing this kind of things here, let's see, like this one. And typically, we have some settings here, some predefined settings, like the one here on top, and the saved ones. These are my personal ones that I've collected over time, and the edited ones are the ones that are created during editing of a certain setting, for example. So these predefined settings we've really for all kind of combinations, we have improved those settings based on the new rendering options, based on the new exceptions and other things. So all those presets, like the settings here, the standard settings that we deliver for all color spaces, they are nearly new. Yeah, that improves, uses one of the features that we've added in here. And one of the features that we have in here that is not part of this, and I want to show you what's that and how it reacts. So what I'm using is a print-to-print exception. Print-to-print means I'm going from offset to offset, for example. Yeah, so I'm staying within a certain limit, same printing properties, and maybe a different printing machine, no problem with that, different paper, different inks, but it's still offset. And typically in these situations, you want to use something like a preserve separation. You want to preserve the original separation of iso-coated and printing that to uncoated. That's definitely a different story if you're printing iso-coated on a digital machine. The digital machine, there's no need to preserve the separation of iso-coated offset in the digital. Makes no sense. In those situations where you're using something like a reseparation, a GCR, for example, there you don't preserve the separation. And in these situations, you use something like our digital printing or large format printing presets. But here in this example, I want to use that. And the reason for this is that I want to look into the color generation option. We're seeing the black generation is set to preserve separation. And we are using a setting here, which is called the preserve 0% black option. And here in the graph, we see what's happening. So that is our Cmyk original color space and our K channel. And we are seeing that, for example, there is no black used here into our original separation. And the reason for that is that little checkbox. If I disable that checkbox, we can see that it will add as well some black in areas where there was no black before. Typically, that's happening in any kind of reseparation. If you're using something like GCR or UCR or MaxK or this kind of typical GCR situations, this will happen. And that's typically wanted, and you typically want that as well. But there might be some situations, especially in a PDF environment, where, for example, you have some overprints. Now, if there is a CMY without black and there is a black overprinting this area, or the other way around, better the other way around. In these situations where there's overprinting situations, it might be that adding black over another color could lead to a knocking out of colors. And if you have this kind of situations, you can avoid that by making sure that the preserve 0% black is enabled. And that's the reason why in this setting, like print-to-print, we enable that automatically. Now, but I mentioned if I'm going to GCR, for example, then in the past, this little checkbox here was not available. And that means that then in those situations where you are printing on, for example, a digital printer, digital press, then your black will be edited in those areas where there was no black before. And that has been improved now, that for certain of the other modes that we have here, like UCR, GCR, target profile with ColorLogic gamut mapping and so on, we enable as well, we are allowing to enable the preserve 0% black option. We don't use it in our standard exceptions here because that is a stronger impact on the separation and you have to select that yourself. But in some situations, it's quite helpful to have that option and therefore you can enable that. Just one little thing which we experience is between preserve separation, if that checkbox is enabled, and if we are switching now to another mode like UCR or GCR, then this one will be enabled as well by default. And this has the reason because it was we cannot simply disable a checkbox and then if you switch back, it will be as well disabled. So we leave the checkbox enabled. when switching between the black generation modes. So make sure that this is really what you want. If you're switching from something like preserve separation to a reseparation, make sure that you keep an eye on the preserve 0% black option here, that typically you want to disable that option, and mostly that's the right choice. But in some situations where you want to avoid that really, black is used in areas where there was no black. You can enable that as well. So that's the new option that we have in here. So that's a lot about device linking here at this point, but I think it's quite good to explain a little bit what those black generation, color generation options are doing and how they interact with within the device link. So another device link that we are creating in Copra and that we have improved a lot is the editing module. So the DeviceLink Profiling, there's an editing module, and the editing module, I think it was my experience with this software is that in the beginning, when we started with the editing module, people used it a lot, and nowadays people don't use it that much anymore. And we think that's really sad because it has so many use cases. Therefore, we've spent some time thinking about how to make it easier to use. And that's what we are coming up with now. We have 3 modes that we deliver with the editing module. This one here, the create device link from edited image, that is basically what it was in Copra 7. So there was no selection of editing mode. It was simply that where you select your already edited image and could go from there. But that requires already somebody deciding which kind of conversion that you want to do. He needs to understand what to do with that image and has to select the right image for the right conversions. So there was a lot of pre-thinking necessary to do the right thing. Therefore, we thought, okay, let's do it differently. What if, for example, I have that Adobe RGB to ISO-coded device link. If I want to improve on that device link, if I want to edit, modify that existing device link. So, and therefore, I could go here, modify existing device link. I would select my device link. Here again, clicking on that little arrow here shows me the recently created profile so that I could start from here. Maybe I want to use that device link that I created, and I want already to improve on that device link, basically. What I would have to do now is to select the right editing chart. In this example, it will select that image automatically. So these are the images that we are delivering with Cobra, our edited image. And the secret is this little, or those little patches here, because they are recording all the edits that you're doing, basically. And from them, you will create a device link profile. And the images here are just there so that you see something and can look into that. But mostly the only thing that's interesting is this part for the software, at least for us human. This, of course, the images are the important parts. So you select the device link you want to start with. For example, maybe I'm selecting something here. No, I don't have something sensible here. Maybe just to show you what's happening if I start from a Cmyk device link, for example, here, then what's happening is that the software automatically selects the right editing chart. It will apply the device link on that editing chart so that we don't start from scratch and the user does not have to think about what to do. So the software does it already for him. So it starts by selecting the right editing chart. In this example, it's a Cmyk to Cmyk conversion. So it would select the Cmyk edit chart and would apply the device link, and then it would convert. And again, if I want to do my Adobe RGB to ISO-coded and want to improve on that, I select my device link. the software selects automatically the correct image to apply. The next things you would have to do is select the editing application. Mostly that will be Photoshop. I've pre-selected my Photoshop version here already. And all I need to do is click on Edit. And then what's happening is that the image, the converted image, will be opened up in Photoshop. So Photoshop is thinking. And here we go. That's my image. That's the one. And it is already converted to Cmyk. And now I could do whatever kind of editings I want. Just to show you something here, like, for example, I want to apply an S-curve here to this image because I like this contrast well. I'm not an expert in editing here, but just to get the idea. You know? So I've made a dramatic change here. All I need to do is click Save. So I'm saving that image. Now I go back to Photoshop, from Photoshop to my Copra. Copra tells me that the image has been edited. So it's important here that you just save the image and not click it and save as with a different name. Then then Copra doesn't find the image anymore. So it has to be that image that we are having here. So simply save it. And then you could create the device link. And here in that part, you could define the source, the target color space here, that's already pre-selected. You could see, or you are seeing those patches that we are extracting here. And from those patches, we are creating the device link. So here I would go to next, and I would now create my device link. We call it edit link, which is basically a combination of the original Icc device link that we have created, plus your edits, or the edits that I've done here, into a device link. So you could do your own tweaking of a device link to your needs. Another very important use case is, for example, if you have a workflow, which is not Icc based, for example, and you want to replicate that workflow with, for example, a color server like Zebra, where you want to use the same color conversion that this workflow does inside Zebra. And here you could simply use one of the edited charts for Cmyk, for example, Cmyk conversion to Cmyk from that other workflow, simply get that chart through that workflow, and then create a device link that would replicate exactly the result of that other workflow. Very nice functionality, very helpful, especially if you're switching from one workflow to another one, more efficient one like Zebra. Mostly it is much faster to do the conversions in Zebra than with other workflows. And if there is a certain color conversion you want to achieve, you can replicate that one-to-one and with the editing module. Another use case I will show you here is if I want to create a new device link from scratch. Okay, here I select the color space I want to start with. So we can say, okay, we have those different color spaces that we support. And let's say we want to do a Cmyk conversion. Again, I would select my Photoshop application here. I would go to edit and select my image. And let's assume I am here and I want to do some retouching in my Cmyk work. Typically, let's say I want to print in ISO-coated. Then I can go here and assign the profile here to that image, ISO-coated, so that I'm seeing this correctly here on screen. Let's assume I just want to stay in that color space. Again, I want to do some adjustment, like, for example, some hue adjustments, maybe as well a little bit lighter or something like that. And maybe as well some color balance changes. Yeah, I'm just doing something here and just that to see what's happening. And if I'm happy with that, well, it looks ugly, but let's say I'm happy with that. I'm saving that. And going back now to Copra, you can see the edited image is already loaded here. And again, I can now select my color spaces here. The source profile is unknown. So in this example here, I know it was iso-coated. I can select that as well. It is not needed to set for the device link, but it's better for the internal usage, because then other applications like Zebra would automatically select the source and the target profile and this kind of things. But for the calculation of the device link, that is of no importance. What I want to look into is another thing, and that is here the exceptions. We have this is the what we call the expert options to purify unwanted color combinations. So this is typically hidden because normally you don't want to do this kind of things. You want to leave the conversion as is. But here, for example, I want to show you what's happening if I'm cleaning the primaries. You can see the software highlights the areas that are contaminated. And for example, here, my cyan, if you're looking here into this area, so my adjustments that I've done from a pure cyan perspective, I've made some adjustments which are questionable, let's say. Yeah? So I've done some very heavy adjustments here, which make sure that my pure cyan is now 3-color. Yeah? And the primary exception that I'm selecting here would clean this up. So it would rigorously delete those colors that are now primaries, which in this example would lead to a delta E 2000 of 14.4. So it's probably a little bit too heavy. So using this exception or this purify option here would be a little bit too heavy here. But the nice thing in the software is it tells us which areas are affected from my correction or from my edit. And it gives me a little bit of an indication that probably what I've did here in Photoshop, if I just want to stay within the color space, I probably don't want to destroy my pureness of colors. So that was probably a little bit too much of my edits here. So, but which would mean I should better go back to Photoshop and do some more logical or better settings, better changes. But at least I could as well make with the primary option, I can clean up some unwanted editings that I've done in Photoshop, for example. Now, so let's assume here, for example, this magenta here, I want to have a pure magenta afterwards. And maybe if there was 1% or 2 or 3% of additional cyan and magenta, then deleting this by using the primaries option would make just a small change in delta E, but it would give us a pure color at the end. And that's where these little expert options are quite helpful. But typically you don't want to use those exceptions. But it's quite helpful here to see how my edits that I've done affects my conversion. And you can see this right away here. And as well, we are always highlighting, for example, if I select the secondaries, you can see all those areas. These are secondary colors, no? And these are all affected from my edit. And we can see here in this example, there is a 7.8% of magenta introduced to the color, which was only cyan and yellow at the beginning. And by using that secondary exception, the delta E would be 3.8. The color change is seen here, so it's quite heavy as well. So probably a little bit too much. Again, this edit was a little bit too much that I've did here. But you get the picture. It cleans up unwanted color combinations, but it does not do a recalculation, something like a DeviceLink would do if we are using exceptions there. So that's what's happening here. So that's what we did with the DeviceLink editing. So to recap here, DeviceLink editing has 3 workflows, and you can create a DeviceLink from scratch, modify an existing DeviceLink, and like in the older versions, create from an already edited DeviceLink. Okay. Michael, we are shortly at 5. Is it still okay? Because I have still a very important topic to cover. Or is this already over the
No, of
timeline?
course, you can continue.
Okay.
Like I said, the recording is still going on. So if people need to leave at 5, then they can always watch the end of it on YouTube. And it's very interesting. So I'd like to see what you have to show.
Okay, good. So I'm now switching to printer profiling, because what we've seen so far is a lot more usage out there for industrial applications, multicolor applications. And one of those applications is that we're seeing is that people are using what is called ECG, Cmyk plus orange, green, violet to extend on the gamut. So that's a typical traditional multicolor working way. And mostly it is used in packaging to reduce the amount of Pantone colors and converting them to the 7-color space to save on ink, basically. You don't have to put a lot of ink then with different Pantone colors and clean the machine all the time. You could do that conversion from the spot colors to the 7-color space and then print, and mostly you get a good result with that. What we're seeing as well, that is especially in ceramics printing, or as well in high quality printing, and as well in packaging with flexo, is that there are often used colors which are what we call special inks. And here's an example of such a case. It's a 6-color measurement data, which consists of cyan, magenta, yellow, black, a light black, and blue. Therefore, for this kind of applications, we have some additions that make the use of those special inks very good and very easy to use for the user. And first of all, we have what we call the multicolor mode. And the multicolor modes are selected here, where you select either to use more of the additional inks, like in our example here, the blue is an extending, it extends the gamut of the Cmyk. The gray obviously does not do that. It has a different purpose. So it is not extending the gamut, it is improving on the gray balance. And that's where it should be used. The light gray should be used in the lighter parts of a gray rendering. And we use the black then in the higher amount of black. So it's more an ink splitting kind of use case here by using that gray. And what the nice thing in Copra 8 is that the special inks that are used here are automatically detected. And here with that little checkbox, the auto checkbox, it will calculate which is the best gamut and which combination of inks are needed to get the highest gamut. And the gamut is shown here in the gamut, and it gives us the number here. So for example, here, let's say, okay, we want to have a tag of 30%, and it will calculate our gamut. By the way, this gamut view is quite helpful here because it shows us really the impact of our choice in terms of black point and GCR settings and so on. Obviously, if I'm reducing the max black to 0, then my gamut would shrink. And we can see it here in the gamut view. We can see it in the numbers that will get lower. And if I'm using more of the max black here, 100% black, I get a bigger gamut, so that's obvious. What's not so obvious is how additional inks contribute to the gamut or not. So for example, here, that's new as well, if I disable the checkbox, I have the possibility to use a certain ink in combination with another ink. Yeah, for example, this gray is enabled and it's combined with black. If I don't want that, I can as well disable that. And what's happening is I get as well another number here. So before we had 3.3, now it's 3.2. so the gamut shrinks. So we can see that by Copra checks the different combinations, all combinations with all the colors here, and figures out which combination gives us the biggest gamut. And it figures that by using gray in combination with black, that's what it shows here, black will be combined with gray, we have a bigger gamut. Let's see what's happening if I disable blue. So that blue is now combined as well. Blue is now combined with cyan, which is the nearest hue that it finds, and now combines cyan with blue. Obviously, that will give us not such a nice gamut, but we see it here already. So we have some not so nice areas here, and we see as well that the gamut volume will shrink as well. So therefore, using the automatic option gives us a nicer gamut here in this area, because blue would extend on the gamut and not will be used in combination with cyan, and only black and gray are combined. And this is shown as well in the curves. If we look into the curves, okay, let's put the black star to 0, then we see what's happening. So we start at 0, and then we use the light gray. At a certain point here, gray goes down, and here at a certain point here, perhaps 85% in this example, there is no gray used anymore. And here at the highest point, we start with black. So now at the beginning, we start with a light black, and then we start with the darker black and add on that. And that's quite helpful for some applications, high quality digital output, for example, where a very smooth and nice rendering of black is needed, or in printing processes like Flexo, which have some issues in the lighter areas, and typically they want to print with a higher amount of inks, for example, to get a very even and high amount of density, but that leads to some, let's say, not so nice rendering of the white and lighter areas. And therefore, they're using something like a light black as well for the lighter areas, so that they can cover that in a better way. And this kind of combination, putting it together, a light gray and the black gray, can be solved as well in such a profile. And that's the new thing that we've added here in Copra, that we automatically calculate that and avoid. So I will switch that. Avoid as well some things like this. Here we can see that in the light areas we are using cyan, and at a certain point we are introducing the blue, because we are combining those channels here in this example, which leads us to some funky curves here. And we've seen in the gamut as well that it does not really help in increasing the color space. And the nice thing with Copra 7, this would happen automatically, and we couldn't avoid that. And now we could manually avoid that, and we could even avoid using the gray if we don't need that, by simply clicking here. And then there's no combination of gray and black anymore, or by using automatic Copra would calculate the black, the combination of channels automatically. So this is a very nice functionality for those special ink use cases that we have a lot in ceramics. And
there is a question about it in chat, but it is in German. So if you can see the chat, you can check it for yourself, because you'll understand it better than I can.
Okay. Where do I see the chat? Okay, let's see. Already. The question is if I can as well define white with the printers, Yes, I can. That is something which we have done in Copra 7 already. This is those two modes here, the multicolor modes, which require special test charts that we are creating as well with ColorEnd. Cmy plus white and Cmyk plus white. And those white inks will be used as a separation as well. So that's a nice feature, helping for example, in textile printing, thinking on a black textile, like a t-shirt or something, and you want to print some nice images there. And one solution would be just a white overprint of the entire textile. White ink is very expensive. And then you print black on top of the white. A very senseless idea, right? So instead of using the black of the textile in the background for your gray balance, and that's what this mode would do. It would combine CMYK plus white, and would reduce the white under grays, for example, and would add more more white in areas where I want to have a full color, for example, red or green or something. There I would have a lot of white underneath, so that this color shines greenish or reddish without the intervention of the black. And that's as well possible with Copra 7 already. We haven't changed anything with that, but what we've changed is basically this special ink mode. And in the past, we had 2 modes more here, strong with special ink and smooth with special ink. And that's what we have reduced now. And it's now available here with the outer mode in the combinable way. So that's new.
There's another question about other color combinations like orange and red, but I'm assuming that's the same thing that you showed just now with the blue, right?
Yes, yes. There are, however, a few situations, for example, if you're thinking on this typical CMYK using orange, green, violet, or using something like orange and red, green and violet, all these combinations are possible. Then always Copra checks if a hue is close to one of the primary inks. The primary inks are the 4 first ones, cyan, magenta, yellow in this example. This could be other colors here as well. Yeah? So, but these are the 4 or the 3 or 4 with black primary inks. And the combinable channels always checks how close they are to a certain primary ink. And mostly for an ECG environment, CMYK, orange, green, violet, the orange is so far away from the magenta and from the yellow that it makes no sense to combine it. Yeah, so in this example, with traditional ECG environment, 7-color printing, there is no way of combining them with the other channels. It simply makes no sense. And only if the hues are so close to each other, then Copra decides to combine one of the primary channels with one of those other channels. And then this little thing here, the combinable options come into play, where you can decide, do I want that or do I not want that? And you can see here in the curves and in the gamuts how the impact of your choices. So that's happening here. Yeah. Okay, and there's one new addition or change. No, it's not a new thing, but a change in the way of how we calculate the black point, which I finally want to show you. That would be my last feature that I want to show you here. And that's the way how we calculate the black point. And typically, as we can see here, the black point here in our data leads to something like 21L. And a very neutral AB values here. So, and a tag of 300, because that's my constraint here. So it's 21 in L star to have something like a very neutral black point. Typically that's wanted. But is that the maximum contrast that I can get? And for this, we have what we call the darkest mode. And the darkest mode is a little bit different. It calculates what kind of combinations do I find, including maybe adding, in this example here, the blue in the equation, leading to a much darker black point, 7.6, which is heavily different to our 21. No? It can lead to some funky curves, as we can see here. And there's always that, that thing that a certain separation or a certain joints here leads us to good values on one hand, but we have to look into as well into the separations, if they make sense and if they look good later on. So that's a little bit questionable here. So, but it is at least possible in this example, probably it's not such a good choice to have a much darker black point, which can be colorful. So it's more colorful here. There are as well some other possibilities of combining colors here, probably, which lead us to even more or darker L values, but then even higher colorful AB values, which is probably not what is really wanted. So it tries to figure out a somewhat more neutral way, but still very dark black point. And that's what the new darkest calculation mode does. In Copra 7, we started already with the darkest mode, but it was not that perfect, let's say. So we improved it by more calculations and adding more inks to the equation. You can see we are adding 100% gray here and 55% of blue in here. No yellow, by the way, to get to that black point. You know? And as I said, it needs to be checked later on in the separation. The report is quite helpful for that, if that's a good choice. But at least it gives us an indication of how far we can go down in L star, because the less L star we have, the better the contrast in the profile will be. And typically that's a very nice property that we want to have, because it gives us darker blacks and mostly a bigger gamut. And we probably can see that as well here. No, we don't see it really, but we can see the impact here. So we have something like a 3.3, yeah? And going to auto, we have a 3.37. So we see that despite the situation that we have a much lighter black point in this example, we have a bigger gamut. You know, so that's possible as well. But at least we can see here the impact as well on the darkest. What's happening here? It leads to this little thing here. Yeah, so it extends here in the dark areas, but obviously it has side effects on the gamut that we can reach as well. You know, and therefore it's not a good choice. But I wanted, at least it's a good demonstration here that there might be some possibilities to get to a darker black point, and mostly a darker black point is definitely a good choice. And therefore it is a good idea to check not only the automatic black point calculation, but as well the darkest mode, and to see how and if that improves in terms of gamut, and in terms of the separation, and in terms of the contrast that I can reach. Okay, so that was it. That was Copra 8 with hopefully a few interesting insights that I've given to you. And yeah, I hope you liked it, and give it a try. Try it with your data, and see how the profiles will improve version versus the older version, or perhaps other profiling applications that you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dietmar, for being the presenter for this session.
You're welcome.
It was very interesting. There's a bunch of stuff that I'd like to test. So I'll be spending some time on that soon.
Wonderful.
Okay, let's see with the rest of the audience if there's any more questions they would like to ask. I don't think there's anything else happening in chat. And in the meantime, yeah, I already said thank you. So I'll invite everybody again to the next session next week. We have a PDF toolbox session, I believe. It might not have been up on the events page yet until recently. So please go and check if you're interested. It's about apply 2 checks inside toolbox fix-ups. Okay, thank you everybody for attending. Thanks again, Dietmar, for presenting. I think that means we can end this cafe, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Okay, goodbye.